Badass of the Week is an iHeartRadio podcast produced by High Five Content.
3 decks of rowers pull hard one final time as the reinforced prow of the Athenian trireme smashes into the flank of the Spartan warship. Into the wreckage of splintered wood, flame, smoke, and whistling arrows leaps a noble Athenian warrior, fearlessly leading his men into the clash of arms. He wears a golden helmet adorned with a bright red horsehair plume, carries a gleaming iron spear, and deflects a Spartan javelin with a golden shield studded with glittering jewels. He fights his way through the enemy, cutting down mighty Spartans who fall beneath his relentless attack. This is Alcibiades, and the Spartans hate him. Not only because he has led armies against them for over a decade, but because he used to serve them, to lead them in battle, but fled their country after allegedly having an affair with their queen. He betrayed them, as he betrayed the Athenians once, and almost certainly will do again. And even though the noble philosopher Socrates has many glowing things to say about the beauty and intelligence of Alcibiades, there are also stories that he once profaned the mysteries of Eleusis and pulled the penises off statues of the gods during an irresponsible night of drunken partying. This is Alcibiades. He is the biggest jerk in the classical age, but he is also a badass. Hello and welcome back to Badass of the Week. My name is Ben Thompson and I'm here with my co-host, Dr. Pat Larish. Pat.
Hey ho, badasses.
Hey, we're working our way through the list of people that I'd want to invite to a keg party. We've talked about Peter the Great, we've talked about Jack Churchill, and we're going to talk about another famous party kind of eccentric weirdo from history. And this is one that I'm very excited about. It's a character from the classical age of Athens and Greece that is Pat, he's a little bit of a nut bar.
He is a little bit of a nut bar, which means that he is full of protein and fiber. Yes. On the one hand, you would want to invite him to a keg party. On the other hand, if you're the one hosting the keg party, you might not want to invite him because there might be property damage.
Yeah, that's true. You would want to invite him to a keg party at someone else's house.
Yes. Someone who is very, very, very chill.
Yes. Someone you do not plan on remaining friends with after the party.
Yeah.
You were telling me a story earlier that you had mentioned to a fellow classicist that we were going to talk about this guy. And I'm going to preface right now, I have always read his name as Alcibiades. I don't know if that's entirely accurate because of the I don't know if that's how they would have said it in ancient Greece. But you have said, you told me that you mentioned that we were going to write about Alcibiades to one of your fellow classicists, and she had some thoughts about it.
She did, yes. Shout out to Robin. And I mentioned to my fellow classicist Robin that you and I, Ben, were going to talk about Alcibiades on Badass of the Week. And she said that she didn't think of him so much as a badass as just a plain old ass.
Which is what I like about it. It was one of the things. He's one of the biggest jerks in classical history. And so he's just this kind of mayhem, this agent of chaos. And I think he's awesome. And we're going to get into a bunch of reasons why he's cool.
Yeah.
But before we get going, is Alcibiades the correct pronunciation?
It is one of the correct pronunciations.
Okay.
So in Greek, Alcibiades, you might have pronounced it something more like Alcibiades, because the letter that we see as C, the letter C as in cookie or, I don't know, circle or something, in English, we pronounce it as a soft C, Alcibiades. And in Greek, that would actually have been represented by the letter kappa, which is the letter K, which is just the hard K sound. So Alcibiades. Now, the thing is, with a lot of these names from ancient Greek sources, some of the names are so well known in English that they basically get anglicized. Alcibiades is totally a legit way to pronounce his name when you're talking about him in English.
Okay. That's what I'm going to go with. I don't think I can really fight that.
Yeah.
I do like the interesting, like, changing of names, like, while we're kind of talking about that. They translated the first Badass book into Spanish, which was really cool. And it was very interesting because for the more modern characters in the book, they kept the names the same. But for the ancient stuff, the classical Greeks and the ancient Romans, they changed it. So Julius Caesar became Julio Cesar, and Alexander the Great became Alejandro el Grande.
Alejandro el Grande.
Yeah. William the Conqueror was Guillermo el Conquistador, which I thought was cool.
Ooh, Guillermo el Conquistador.
Yeah, pretty sweet.
That does have a nice ring to it.
I know, I like it.
Yeah.
The book in I wasn't sure how they would translate the word badass into Spanish, but the book is called Los Más Duros de la Historia.
Los Más Duros. Okay, so Más Duros, like, what is that? Like the hardest guys, the hardest people. Yeah. Yeah. On the other hand, Los Más Duros, it kind of has the same ring to it as badasses, Los Más Duros.
Yeah. You got to do it with the whole, there's a performative aspect to the Los Más Duros, I imagine. You have to have the pronunciation
Los Más
correct.
Duros.
You have to roll some R's in there, something.
Los Más Duros.
Los Más Duros.
Yeah.
I like
Ole.
it. Okay, well, but we're not here to talk about I guess we are here to talk about Los Más Duros de la Historia, but we're going to talk about a character from Greek history who...
Oh, he was quite a character.
He was a character. He was a guy who changed allegiances based on who liked him and who was sick of his attitude. He's a war hero. He's
legit.
Yeah.
But he is also a war hero. He was... Like, we led the episode saying, who would we invite to a keg party if we weren't the ones actually hosting the keg party? But the thing is, this guy, like, he had, two neurons to rub together. He had a brain. He had a certain amount of competence in the military arena.
He had competence and he had a lot of confidence as well. He was extremely confident about his competence. Sometimes to a detrimental amount.
Okay, yeah.
He's kind of like a little bit of an egomaniac, a little bit of a party animal, but he's also like an accomplished strategist and war hero.
And also like the it boy, kind of.
Yeah,
Everyone thought he was hot.
Everybody thought he was hot. Everybody thought he was awesome.
Yeah. Okay, I have to intervene as a historian. We don't have documentary evidence that literally everyone, literally 100% of the population thought he was hot. But we have evidence that some of the population thought he was hot, including people mentioned in the writings of Plato. So
yes. So how about this? We could say this: 100% of the people who wrote about his attractiveness thought he was attractive. There's zero sources saying that he was not attractive. There's some people who say he was a dick, but there's not some. They also agree that he was attractive.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So
okay, none of my students are going to be listening to this episode because it's rated whatever. It's rated not appropriate. But if any of my students were going to be listening to this episode, I'm going to embarrass myself even further and say Alcibiades had Riz.
Oh, shoot. I don't even know what that means. I'm so out of touch.
I think that's what people in the know say today. It's short for charisma, but it's a specific type of charisma. And I'm going to wager that whatever this mysterious Riz quality is, Alcibiades had it.
Yeah. I mean, I'll go full nerd. I'll say it was an 18 charisma.
That's pretty rare.
Yeah,
it's pretty special.
18's rare. 18's rare. So that was kind of the deal. You roll the 20-sided dice and you have to hit the number or get under it. At least in first edition D&D. I'm getting deep into this shit now, but I'm getting deep into this now. But you had to roll a 20-sided die and get the number or under. So 18's the highest you could have for your ability score because there was always a chance you'd fail.
Ooh, yeah.
Which does eventually happen to Alcibiades. Or actually, his continued charisma successes end up contributing to his downfall. Because he does not like to... he just keeps making the wrong people fall in love with him. And it keeps backfiring on him. Okay. Yeah, so we're going to take a quick break, and then we are going to tell the story of Alcibiades, a person who I believe is one of the most eccentric weirdos of the classical age, probably one of the biggest jerks to ever live. Just a really, really interesting character that I'm going to argue was very badass, even though your colleague might not agree. I think I can make a compelling case.
I think we're open to hearing the badass hypothesis. Yeah. I sort of feel like this ship has already sailed, but heads up in case my mom happens to be listening to this episode. First of all, hi, Mom. And this episode contains mature content and may not be suitable for all audiences, cough, cough, my ninth graders. Also, we might say swears. But it's about Alcibiades, so what did you expect?
Alcibiades was born in Athens in 450 BCE. He was the son of a wealthy politician back in the golden age of Athenian democracy. Picture the guys in togas in the forum voting on things.
No. Togas were Roman, dude. Chitons.
Chitons?
Yeah, that's the Greek thing. Yeah.
It looks like a toga, though.
I mean, like a bunch of cloth draped over you. Yeah.
A different way of draping it.
Different way of draping it, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I just learned something.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Alcibiades' father died heroically in battle while Alcibiades was very young. He grew up in this wealthy family, aristocratic. They claimed lineage that traced back to the Telamonian Ajax of Homer's Iliad. Alcibiades, growing up after his father died, he lived with his uncle, who was a very famous Athenian diplomat named Pericles.
Oh, wait, Pericles.
The Pericles, yeah.
That guy.
The guy, yeah, he's big deal. He's a big deal in Athenian democracy.
Yeah. Oh, very big deal, yes. Yeah.
So Alcibiades grows up and he's in the high society of ancient Athenian social circles. He gets mentored by a guy named Socrates, who is Socrates.
That guy?
Yes, the Socrates.
Yes. Yes, by Zeus.
Yes, the famous Athenian philosopher, like the guy who kind of basically invented philosophy as we know it. He was Alcibiades' tutor. Alcibiades studied oratory, philosophy, and music. He won first place in chariot racing at the freaking Olympic Games, like the Olympic Games.
Like the original Greek that took place in Olympia, Greece?
Yes. Yeah. He was a gold medalist. I don't know if they gave out gold medals at the time, but he was first place at the Olympic Games in chariot racing. And as we have mentioned, he was kind of well known as the most charismatic and hottest person in all of Athens.
And he was on all the magazine covers if they had magazine covers in those days.
Right. Exactly.
Or maybe the page 3 fold out or whatever.
Something like that. Yeah. He was rich. He was extravagant. He had the nicest hitons in all of Greece. He was totally self-centered, so he wanted everybody to know that he was the hottest and the best. He was basically just like a complete pain in the ass to everybody all the time. One time he got in trouble for he was wrestling with another guy in like a wrestling competition, and he bit the guy because he was going to lose and he didn't want to lose.
Wait, bit like with his teeth?
With his teeth, yeah. He like kind of
like
Mike
literally?
Tyson. Yeah, just kind of Mike Tyson that guy. Except he bit him in the arm. He bit a piece of that guy's arm off, and he got disqualified.
Okay. Yeah.
He would kind of get drunk at parties and punch aristocrats in the face in public, which was...
I mean, we all want to punch aristocrats in the face, but we don't actually follow through on that.
Yeah, he would do it.
Yeah.
So he's like, I mean, I kind of like to think of him as kind of a rock star or a superstar athlete, one of these kind of cover of, sexiest man alive, but he's also like kind of a bad boy because he's always getting into fights and stuff, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
He started a revolution in his music class because he really hated playing the flute. And he had to learn how to play the flute. It was part of the musical training in Athens for men at the time, I guess, aristocrats. And he hated it and he didn't want to do it. So he wrote an entire treatise on the subject of fuck flutes. And he was like...
I should intervene and say, like, the flutes in those days were different from the flutes that we think of nowadays. Like nowadays, like you're in middle school, you're in band. Okay, yeah, I'm going to learn how to play flute. And it's one flute that you hold horizontally sort of like across your right shoulder, and you like toot, 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 and you play into it, and then but the flute in those days was actually two pipes, two reeds that you would put in your mouth and kind of stick outward, like in front of you.
I've seen this on some kind of Greek art, like the vase paintings and stuff. You see satyrs and centaurs and stuff playing this kind of thing with the two pipes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I have not actually played the ancient Greek type of flute called the aulos, but I think what you have to do is you have to kind of puff up your cheeks and go like a chipmunk. I don't know.
Like a bagpipe.
And yeah.
I think you have to do it with the bagpipes. Yeah.
Yeah. And, so.
Alcibiades didn't like that because you don't look hot when your face is all puffed up like a chipmunk. He didn't like it.
It's very not hot.
Yes. So.
Or like, I feel like I should apologize to flute players. Anyway, but Alcibiades.
We're going to go hard. Alcibiades went hard on flouting and flautists, and he did not like it. He wrote an entire multi-page treatise in ancient Greek on the topic of how much he hated playing the flute. He said he looked ugly while you're playing it. He cites the fact that Apollo hated the flute, apparently.
Okay, yeah. Marsyas, this guy, Apollo had beef with this particular guy, Marsyas, who played flutes. I don't know if Apollo's beef with flutes was about flutes per se, or if it was a beef with this one particular guy who played flutes and just kind of got transferred.
I've done that before, though. If like somebody I hate really likes something, then I won't like that thing anymore just because they like it.
Yeah. But also, not only Apollo, but also Athena, the goddess of wisdom, and all sorts of like arts and crafts. You'd think she'd be into the whole like music thing because it involves like skill and planning and like knowledge. But she tried out flutes. And this is Athena. She's the goddess of wisdom. We don't think of her as very like beauty oriented or very like vanity oriented, but she tried out these flutes. She puffed up her cheeks and she was like, oh my goodness, I look so not elegant here. I do not look like a goddess of wisdom. I look like, I look some sort of like weird off-brand Pokemon or something. I don't know. And
I guess you have to kind of puff your cheeks up for tuba. Like maybe that's kind of the vibe here. You gotta produce a ton of air. Because if you're going through two flutes at the same time, I imagine that requires a ton of air. Probably extremely difficult. And people enjoyed listening to the flute, but but people didn't like playing them, right?
Or certain very highly influential individuals did not like them.
Who prided themselves on their looks above all other things. Like Alcibiades, that's going to be a common thread among the Alcibiades story here. He hated it. He thought he looked ugly when he was playing it. He apparently had a very good singing voice, and he thought it was a stupid instrument because you couldn't play it and sing at the same time. So he didn't like it. And then the gods don't like it. You know, the gods that he loves, Athena and Apollo, Apollo especially is a very Alcibiades kind of god.
And also Athena is the patron goddess of the city of Athens. So
why are we learning flute in class? This sucks. I love that he hated this class so much that he wrote a big long paper that exists to this day about how much he hates the flute. And so he decided, he ends the treatise by saying flutes are, quote, for the sons of Thebes, because Thebians are such fools and bad singers and terrible conversationalists that nobody wants to hear them talk anyway, so they should just fucking play the flute.
It's a very elegant and finely crafted way of saying, shut the F up, Thebans.
Shut up, Thebes. Nobody likes you. Anyway, Alcibiades hated it. And all the rest of his class, he was able to incite the rest of his class to kind of rebel against flute class. And not only did they not have to practice flute, but they got it removed from the Athenian curriculum entirely.
Whoa. He organized a movement.
He organized a musical movement that removed flouting from Athenian writings. And this is like not a thing that I'm making up. Livy dedicates like 2 paragraphs to describing how bad Alcibiades hated flutes and all things related to the flute.
Wow.
So
Livy, the Roman historian.
Yes.
So this is
hundreds of years after Alcibiades, the Romans are writing about, hey, remember this guy and how much he hated flutes. Honestly, with 3,000 years after this, we are talking about it on a podcast that this guy hated flutes 500 years BC.
So Alcibiades, he's Alcibading all around town.
He's Alcibading all over the place. Yeah,
I'm too sexy for my flute.
Yes.
Too sexy for my flute.
He is too sexy for his flute, but he is not too sexy for the entire rest of the Athenian population, men, women, whatever. He's got a very, I think you've phrased it really well when we did the Julie d'Aubigny episode, when you said that he had a very busy social calendar, which is a very good way of saying that.
Julie d'Aubigny, but I think I was referring specifically to Joseph de Boulogne.
Yes. But
okay, so Alcibiades, he had a busy social life.
He has a very busy social life. He is getting around with whoever will have him, and whoever will have him is everybody. It is strongly implied that him and Socrates had a thing going on for like a decade. And some classical writers kind of go to great pains to describe that Socrates was like the only lover that Alcibiades wasn't a complete jerk to. Like, oh no, he was good to Socrates, but you know, all of these other aristocratic men and women of Athens, he kind of just ghosted them and didn't call them back, you know?
Yeah.
Socrates, for his part, ends up writing like 3 books about how hot Alcibiades was, and basically said he was the most attractive human being who ever lived. And to be fair, like that sounds a little weird now, and it was a little weird in ancient Greece too. We're going to get to that later. But, you know, Socrates and Alcibiades' thing made a lot of people uncomfortable at the time, just like it would make people uncomfortable if it was a similar setup now. Socrates is much older than Alcibiades and was his teacher and all of this stuff. So, So Socrates writes all these books about how Alcibiades is hot, and also that like this guy would be the most successful man in the history of Athens if he just stopped sleeping around all
himself.
What's that? Applied himself.
If he just applied himself.
Applied himself to something other than humping everybody in Athens. If he just tried to do something with his life and stopped sleeping around and think about bigger things, then maybe he could be the greatest Athenian ever. He could surpass even Pericles himself.
Oh, that's a very high bar.
Very high bar, yeah. Let's see if Alcibiades passes it. So, you know, like you said, your colleague said that this guy's just kind of an ass. And yes, and being a jerk to everybody you know isn't all that badass. We don't really want to advocate that.
No, it's just jerk ass.
Right. But people put up with him because he was also insanely brave in combat and was a very active and bold military commander. So remember, like, he's only like 20, but he is...
So he's like, these days he would be, you know, like a sophomore or junior in college,
right?
Maybe.
But he was an aristocrat, and he wasn't like trained in military arms and fighting, and didn't go to the military academy or whatever. He was just rich and connected. And when wars started happening, which happens at this time, he is an officer, because that's what happens. He's a young strapping guy, and you make him an officer because his family's rich, and that's how the world worked back then.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, his family, in some sense, whether like actually or symbolically, his family could afford a horse.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they could also just you could buy your commissions, buy your officer stuff. Yeah, like he was just...
they can afford privileges.
Right. We don't want this guy on the first rank of hoplites. We want him kind of in the back, like making the decisions so that he doesn't get stabbed. He's too pretty to be stabbed in the face.
Yeah.
But he is fighting in the Peloponnesian War against Sparta. And I mean, and this is kind of a serious war that takes place. And he's going to be an active military commander in this at a very young age. So, and he's Athenian. He's fighting Spartans, who are notoriously pretty hardcore.
Yes, they're very hardcore. Yeah. Military training is part of life for Spartan boys and then men. Sparta and Athens are like the two superpowers, let's say, in Greece at this time. I say Greece, but I mean Greece, the geographical region. Politically, Greece is not a unified thing, And the Peloponnesian War is about these two major city-states. They're vying for the hegemony of the Peloponnese, which is the large peninsula that Sparta is on. And Sparta and Athens have two totally different ways of being a city-state. Sparta is very militaristic. Athens is democratic. And I feel like I should put in an asterisk here and say that being democratic in Athens, democracy in Athens doesn't mean everyone gets to vote. It means the adult male citizens who had completed military training get to vote.
Also like Starship Troopers. Service guarantees citizenship.
Yeah, Starship Troopers, I think, is like gender neutral, gender inclusive. But aside from that, you've got citizens and then you've got, what is the term? Civilians? Okay, so that's Starship Troopers. That's the Robert Heinlein novel / movie. And then you've got Sparta. Sparta's very militaristic. Athens is very democratic, very democratic for the time and place. Athens has been growing in power. And Sparta's a little bit nervous. And, okay, I'm going to grossly oversimplify. Athens and Sparta are kind of vying for domination. Neither one wants the other one to take over. And Athens and Sparta suck other city-states into the whole conflict. They make a mess of the peninsula. I'm sorry, I'm just really glossing over the details.
Right. But I mean, we all kind of can picture the general idea here of Athens is the guys standing in the forum arguing about philosophy, and Sparta is shirtless Gerard Butler kicking a guy into a hole.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah. Now,
roughly.
I'm sure there were Athenians who kicked guys into holes, and I'm sure there were Spartans who had philosophical thoughts, But on the one hand, it's like, oh, my ideology versus your ideology. On the other hand, it's also, let's be clear, my home team versus your home team. And so some of it was ideological, and some of it was also just like, do I want to be on the winning team?
They had a common language and a common writing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then we also at this time had the Persians out there.
It's after the Persian Wars. And Persia is out there.
Yeah, they've been beaten. Athens and Sparta worked together to defeat the Persians, but now they're kind of vying for power. The Persia's down, but they're still around, and you really don't want them intervening on either side.
Yes. Yeah. So even when the Persian Empire is down, there's still an 800-pound gorilla.
Yeah. They still have way more people. They're way more money, everything.
Oh, yeah.
Huger navy, everything.
And so Athens and Sparta are going at it, and each side in the conflict, if Persia's going to get involved, my side wants Persia to support me and not the other guy. And I mention this because it will become relevant later.
Okay. So for now, Sparta and Athens go to war for control of basically this region. They're two very different places, and they're fighting. So this war breaks out, and as a prominent member of Athens and Athenian culture and this great poster boy for all that is great about Athens, Alcibiades has to go to war. So he becomes a commander, and he volunteers to go fight the Spartans in hand-to-hand combat, which is brave.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. So instead of being like a coddled, posh, aristocratic officer back in a tent somewhere making, oh my goodness, decisions, he's actually putting himself out there.
He's kind of doing both. He's putting himself out there, but he has a gold-plated shield that is encrusted with jewels because he wants you to see him while he's doing. He wants you to know that he's out there, and he wants you to see him, and he wants to reflect those jewels back in your face.
Okay, part of me wants to say, like, what's the tensile structure of gold? Like, is gold the ideal substance for a shield to ward off Spartan arrows? I think
it's plated over iron. So it would be an iron shield, but would have gold plating over top of it for the color and the brilliance of it, and then whatever jewels inside of that.
And jewels, because why not?
Why not? Yeah.
And also, I don't know. Who knows? Maybe the gold and the jewels. Maybe if you get in the right angle with the sun, maybe it'll blind your opponent.
Oh, yeah, that'd be fun.
I don't know. Yeah, it's like an infinity gauntlet except shield form.
Yes, that's how I picture it as well, honestly. And so he's fighting and he's having a lot of success, both as a commander and on the battlefield. At the Battle of Potidæa, he's wounded in action, but his life is saved by Socrates, who we forget Socrates.
Wait, Socrates the philosopher?
Yeah, no, Socrates was a soldier also, yeah. You got to vote, right? Service guarantees citizenship. And so Socrates saves Alcibiades' life when he's wounded in battle. And then a little bit later, in 424, at the Battle of Delium, which is a big battle between the Athenians and the Spartans, Socrates is actually wounded in combat with the Spartans. And Alcibiades has to fight his way through a crowd of Spartans to get to him and drag Socrates from the fight. So he saves Socrates' life. The commander of the overall commander, the general in charge of the Athenian army at the Battle of Delium, was so impressed when he saw Alcibiades with his gold-plated shield and I presume a gold-plated sword and gold-plated armor or whatever else. Kind of
jewels glinting in the sunlight.
Right. When you see that, you don't picture that guy is going to be on the front lines of the battle. You picture he's going to like wear that for the parade down the streets of Athens, but not, into combat. You're kind of a big target when you were attacking a bunch of Spartans with your gold-plated shield. But he did it, and he charged out into combat to save his wounded mentor / boyfriend / teacher, whatever else he might have been.
/ Socrates.
/ the most famous philosopher in human history / your injured ally in combat, right? Your battle brother. He fights out there, and the Athenian commander was watching from his horse up on the hill as Alcibiades is fighting his way through, and he's so impressed that after the battle, he offers his daughter to Alcibiades in marriage. Which is a thing that I guess just happened back then.
It's a thing that happens. I'd like to think that the daughter was okay with this. I'm just going to tell that story in my head.
Yeah, I mean, it's an arranged marriage, but she scored, right? From what it sounds like. As far as arranged marriages go, this one's not so bad. I mean, he cheated on her a lot, so maybe it was. Maybe she wasn't super happy with it, but... He was also the most eligible bachelor in all of Greece, he
was on all the magazine covers.
Yeah.
The magazines hadn't been invented yet. Yeah. Okay.
So they're fighting with Sparta, and the fighting, they're called the Peloponnesian Wars because there are many of them.
Yeah, one way or another, this whole thing goes on and off for like 2.5 decades.
Yeah. And so there's a peace, right? After Delium, there's a peace. Athens wins the Battle of Delium. Alcibiades is there. Athens is on top right now. And so mostly a stalemate, but Athens, they did better than people were expecting, right? Spartans are the war culture, and people, they were kind of expecting like an easy victory against these soft Athenians, and the Athenians gave them a hard fight, and now there's
we're at a
stalemate.
The philosophers.
Yeah. But they're badass philosophers, and they stopped them. So the Spartans came to the Athenians, and they wanted to negotiate a peace treaty. And the Athenians send all of their most charismatic Athenians to go negotiate this peace treaty. And one of them is our friend Alcibiades.
Oh, he's got Riz?
Yes, he's got Riz. And he is just a massive prick to the Spartan delegation when they come to talk to him. Humongously a jerk to them. And they decide they don't want to deal with him anymore. So they start talking to another Athenian statesman, a guy named Nicias.
Maybe this is kind of like good cop, bad cop, or like bad cop, good cop, or maybe like asshole cop, nice cop.
That could be. I mean, you really can't rule it out because they go to this guy Nicias, and Nicias is the good cop here, and Nicias negotiates the final peace deal that ends this particular Peloponnesian War. And the Spartans announced that there is the Peace of Nicias.
Oh, so they named it after Nicias. They named it after him.
Yeah. And how do you think Alcibiades felt about that?
Oh, Mr. Magazine cover, Mr. It Boy, Mr.
Why do we like this guy? I don't remember. Alcibiades was extremely upset that they did not name the peace treaty after him, and he would go around kind of telling everybody about how Nicias did the easy part, and Alcibiades would have made a harder deal or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know. He's just such a nut bar that I think is so funny, and I love reading his stories. Okay, so Alcibiades is mad that this peace treaty has ended this way, and he's going to he decides he's going to get Sparta, and he never forgets this disrespect that they would announce the peace of Nicias and not the peace of Alcibiades.
He has a chip on his shoulder with respect to Sparta.
Yes, and has been wounded by them in battle, and has fought them, and has killed several Spartans in battle, and he's got a soft heart in there. As many narcissists do.
Well, yeah. It's like, okay, you dissed me. Okay.
Cannot abide.
I'm going to remember this. Yeah. But we're going to stop right here for a second to hear ads, so we'll be right back.
And we're back. Let's pick up right where we left off. War breaks out again a couple years later in 420, because these two are they're still the two biggest ones on the block, and there's naval confrontations, there's land confrontations, there's cultural confrontations. Eventually, war breaks out again, and Alcibiades is made a general this time. He's made like a big high-level commander in the Athenian military, and
so despite his jerkitude, or maybe because of his jerkitude, he's risen up the ranks.
Yeah, I picture him being, like, I don't know, even down to like the bling and everything, right? Like I picture him being like an athlete on a sports team that is like extremely outspoken and like very kind of aggressive. If that guy's on your team, you love him. But if he's not on your team, you hate him.
Yes. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You made the sports team analogy earlier, and that's kind of how I think about this guy. Is like, if he's on your team, you just like, oh, that guy, he's awesome. He cracks me up. But if you're Spartan, you're like, this guy, we gotta fucking get this guy. Like he's gotta die.
Yes.
Okay. So in 420, the war starts. Alcibiades is 30, and he's a general. He and his wife have had 2 kids that they're raising, and he's still rich. He's still good looking. People are still writing about him. He's still writing about other things. Anyway, he never stopped sleeping around. He cheated on her basically immediately and continues to throughout his rest of his life. But that's Alcibiades for you. So a couple years pass, and Alcibiades is sitting there stewing, and he's mad about the Spartans, and he wants another Peloponnesian War. So he's going to get Sparta if it's the last thing he does. And what he wants to do is in 420, he starts giving speeches. At this point, he's a general in the army. So he's shown enough promise as a junior officer that they've made him a general. And now he wants to kind of stick it to the Spartans. And what he wants to do is attack Syracuse, a powerful city-state on Sicily, and they have allied with the Spartans. And Alcibiades is convinced that they got to pay for it. So he starts giving all of these big speeches to the Athenians saying that if we can take Sicily, then we'll have timber for our ships. There will be trade. We can open our trade rate lanes into the Italian peninsula. We can expand. We can maybe become an Athenian empire. Everyone is going to be happy. We're going to be rich. We'll have kind of box Sparta in. We'll have Athens to the east and Sicily to the west. Like, we'll box them in. We can contain them. This will be great. And he starts giving all these big speeches. And he's a very good speech giver. He's a very charismatic guy, and people are on board with it. One guy who's not on board with this is our friend Nicias. Do you remember him? In the Peace of Nicias?
Oh, yeah, the Peace of Nicias. Not the Peace of Alcibiades, but the Peace of Nicias.
Yeah,
okay.
That guy's like, hey, I just negotiated a peace treaty like 2 years ago. Maybe we shouldn't just immediately declare war on Sparta again. It kind of goes against that treaty, that Peace of Nicias. So he starts arguing with Alcibiades. There's some debates. There's a vote because we are in a democracy. And the Athenian Military Council decides, okay, here's the deal. we're going to send 6,000 guys on 60 ships to attack Sicily. We're going to get Sicily because all of that stuff about Athenian power and wealth and timber and all of that stuff, that sounds great. We can open up trade with the Italian peninsula. We can control the waterways. This is great.
Yeah.
But the compromise is that both Alcibiades and Nicias will be in charge of commanding the attack, and they'll have equal power over the campaign. They will be co-generals of the Athenian army for this military endeavor.
How does that work out?
Well, Alcibiades has a symposium.
Dude.
He's going to party. He is going to have a symposium, which is just a drunken party at the house of somebody Alcibiades knows that doesn't mind having their house trashed. That having their house trashed by Alcibiades is something that he can like brag to his neighbors about later, right? And all these guys go there, they start drinking, they get blindingly drunk. They take the party outside, they're drinking, they're doing all this stuff. And Alcibiades and his friends, they're having this revelry, they're having this party, they're all getting completely annihilated. They storm out into the streets of Athens, screaming and yelling, and Alcibiades starts running down the main street of Athens naked, pulling all of the penises off the statues on the main street of Athens. According to his arrest record, he profaned the mysteries of Eleusis, which sounds like he exposed himself to Persephone or something. And when the Athenians woke up the next morning, they found an entire pantheon of neutered gods, and they were very unhappy with the results of Alcibiades' drunken partying.
Ooh.
The sailors and Marines that were going to go on the mission with him, they thought it was a bad omen, but Alcibiades...
I would too, honestly.
Yeah, Alcibiades denied everything. It wasn't me. I didn't do it. I wasn't there. I don't know where those penises went. He demanded an immediate trial right now. You can try me right now, right here on the spot. The Athenian council said they weren't quite ready to begin a trial immediately. And so he was like, all right, well, then I'm off. I'm commanding this army and see you later. See you in Sicily. Sails off immediately to go fight Spartans.
Okay, so I want to intervene here and just say to our listeners that this is not just a joke that Ben came up with for the show. This is a real thing. It's known as the desecration of the Herms or the mutilation of the Herms. And the term
I love that I didn't know there was a name for this before like we started doing this episode. You were like, oh, it's the desecration of the Herms. I was like, oh my God, I love that that's what it's called. I love that this guy his drunken vandalism has like a name that has lasted through history. And it's the desecration of the Herms.
It's the desecration of the Herms. And so the term Herm, I just like it rhymes, So a Herm is a specific type of statue. It probably originated as a form of boundary marker, like, my property versus my neighbor's property. The Greek word is herma. So it's, picture a chunky rectangular pillar with a head on top. It's kind of like a Pez dispenser, except the heads on Pez dispensers are bigger than the column. For these Herms, the head is about as wide as the rectangular column. So you've got a rectangular column, and on top of that is a head. And then partway down the Herm is a stylized representation of a penis.
And that's it. It's just those are the only two lifelike pieces represented. It's just a rectangle.
A head and junk. Yeah.
Huh. Mm-hmm. And he pulled off the junk.
Apparently.
I mean,
or allegedly.
Allegedly,
because he denied it. He denied it.
I don't know what happened to him. I happened to be drunkenly partying down that street that night.
Yeah. But
don't look in the river.
Genitalia were yanked.
And so Alcibiades, when they don't give him a trial, they go to war. He goes to war.
Okay, and these statues were made out of marble.
He was the sitting commander of the Athenian army. He was the commander-in-chief of the Athenian military. And he took a freaking hammer or chisel or some kind of tool, probably.
I have no idea.
Unless he was extremely strong.
Yeah, I mean, these are not cheap plastic Pez dispensers. Apologies to Pez dispensers. Also, Pez dispensers do not have anatomical features that we were talking about here.
That's the bachelorette party version.
Yeah, these are marble statues.
Yeah. And so he sets sail with 6,000 soldiers and 60 ships to go fight Spartan forces on the island of Sicily. And he wins. He wins 2 battles against the Spartans. He's fighting naval battles off the coast of Sicily. And naval battles at this time are like a bunch of guys rowing, like one of those ships with the big eye on the front of it on the prow. Guys with like oars. You just literally row your ship and crash into the other ship and then run on board the other ship and start fighting. A hoplite armor with the skirt and the helmet with the crest on it and stuff. He's got that golden shield. They're fighting. Their ships are on fire. They're having these huge battles off the coast of Syracuse, and Alcibiades is winning them. He's beating the Spartans at sea and in hand-to-hand combat, which is unheard of, right?
He knows what he's doing.
He's crushing it. And and then he gets a letter. Comes to his cabin. He's won these 2 battles. He's defeated the Spartan navy. He's about to launch the ground assault on the city of Syracuse itself, which is very fortified, very difficult. We have talked. You just were talking about kind of women wanting to be a little bit effaced, or having how that's more noble or whatever.
I don't know that the women wanted to be effaced, but society kind of put them in an effaced sort of position.
The defense of Syracuse, the writings about the defense of Syracuse mention lots of women by name. There are these Spartan women who are there, and women allied with the Spartans. They're out there digging trenches. They're organizing the women of the city into military formations to fight these Athenians, to fight off Alcibiades probably. but yeah, like there's a lot of women who are named in the defense of Syracuse because the entire city is coming together to try to defend. Alcibiades is in his planning session trying to figure out how he's going to attack this town with all these trenches and earthworks and everything. And he gets a letter, and the letter says, "Hey, we gave you a trial while you were gone for that mutilation of the Herms. And bad news, you were found guilty in absentia. And now you have to return to Athens so that you can be executed."
Okay, so if I were Alcibiades, would I have any motivation whatsoever to return to Athens in person?
Well,
with my actual self.
Your wife and mentor and family and all of your friends and whatever are there?
Okay, on the one hand, yes.
But then you would just die
on the other
immediately,
hand,
so no.
Condemned to death. Yeah.
You know, you are the general of the Athenian army. You are
Alcibiades,
respectable person. You are supposed to do the honorable thing and return to Athens and face your punishment like a man. That is the very Greek thing to do, or a very honorable thing to do.
So did Alcibiades return home to do, to do the honorable thing? Did he cowboy up and return home to face his due punishment, his condign punishment? I've always wanted to use that word, condign. As we know from history, his mentor, Socrates, did in fact face his own punishment. Is that what Alcibiades did?
He did not. He got in a rowboat, rowed over to Syracuse, and offered his services to the Spartans. He said, "Hey."
The anti-Athenians.
Yes. He said, "Guess what? I have all of the Athenian military plans on how we're going to attack Syracuse. Would you like to see them?" He showed up, offered his services to the king of Sparta, and gave up a bunch of Athenian state secrets. He drew out the entire Athenian plan of attack for the Sicilian campaign, told the Spartans which fortresses to reinforce, which ones were going to be attacked. He even offered to lead the Spartan army into battle.
Whoa.
Mm-hmm.
Hey.
And here's the weird thing, right? So Alcibiades is left. He's fled. He's wanted for death. He flees to the Spartans. The Athenians, to their credit, they don't know where he's gone, but he's gone.
Yeah.
Nicias, remember how I said Alcibiades might have just felt like he could steamroll Nicias? Alcibiades makes these plans to attack Syracuse, and Nicias executes them exactly as written.
So Alcibiades, who has the plans, in his head, or maybe in written form, who knows? Alcibiades, who knows these plans like the back of his hand.
He responds to them. He's personally leading the attacks on the weakest parts of the Athenians do exactly what Alcibiades told him to do. he's playing both sides of the chessboard, right? and so he crushes them. Nicias like gets crushed. He gets annihilated. The people of Syracuse defend all of those women who are building the trenches and reinforcing the cities. Alcibiades joins them on the walls of Syracuse and is like, actually, we're going to need some more trenches over here because they're going to try to sweep around this way. And when Nicias shows up, they crush him. Alcibiades leads the Spartan army into battle. He's fighting with the Spartans. He's a junior officer in the Spartan army. He leads them into battle against the Athenians, crushes them. Nicias dies in battle, which super sucks because remember, he didn't even want to be there. He didn't even want to be there in the first place. And okay.
So that's going on.
Yeah, the Syracuse campaign, the Sicilian campaign is a humongous catastrophe for Athens. Many of those 6,000 men do not make it home. Nicias does not make it home. Alcibiades wins. Sparta wins. He's now on the winning side of 2 Peloponnesian Wars, even though different city-states won those 2 wars. That's Alcibiades.
So
this is also Alcibiades. He has sex with the Queen of Sparta.
The Queen of Sparta, as in the wife of the King of Sparta.
As in the wife of the King of Sparta. She gets pregnant by Alcibiades.
How does this go over?
Not well. King of Sparta decides we need to get this Alcibiades guy and we need to cut his head off and put it on a spike and parade it around Sparta. But that's the plan. Alcibiades is going to get cake popped now in Sparta and in Athens. So the Queen of Sparta has an affair with him. She gets pregnant. She has the kid who lives.
Yeah. And I feel like that's worth mentioning because, in maybe some other time and place, they might have, given the kid to like wolves or bears to be eaten or something. But here they let the son live because honestly, why throw away a good potential soldier, honestly? But does he get full like Prince of Sparta recognition?
No, he does not. He does not inherit the throne. No. Yeah. Yeah, so the son of Alcibiades and Timea, Queen of Sparta, does not inherit the throne, though he does live. But King Aegeus II is definitely down to kill Alcibiades. He's ready to finish this guy off. So if you're Alcibiades, what do? Everybody wants you dead.
My guess is that since this is Alcibiades, I'm fuzzy on the details, but I'm guessing he somehow manages to survive and thrive.
He does his thing. He runs away and he goes to Persia. Goes to the Persian Empire.
Oh, whoops. You mean the guys we fought against back in the previous war?
Yep. He becomes friends with a Persian governor named Tissaphernes. And he goes down there and he's like, okay, well, remember how we were talking about how Persia was even bigger and stronger than Athens or Sparta? Maybe he'll be safe here. He can go to Persia.
Make friends with the 800-pound gorilla?
Yeah. So he goes there. Okay. And the 800-pound gorilla in this example is the Persian, he's a governor, they call him a satrap, but Tissaphernes. He becomes friends. Tissaphernes sees him because Alcibiades is one of the most famous people in the world. And
he's on all the magazine covers.
Right. Tissaphernes sees him and Alcibiades is like, hey, you should ally with Athens and fight Sparta.
How does Tissaphernes respond?
Tissaphernes is like, no, that's a terrible idea. The Athenians hate us. They have democracy, so they have to vote for us to help them. And they're never going to vote for us to join them, even though they want to beat Sparta. They're never going to vote to like work with the Persians. Like they hate us. And so this doesn't work. And sorry, buddy, you're going to have to go back.
Okay. So Alcibiades, at least right now, is playing the pro-Athenian line. It's like, hey, can I try to maybe kind of get this Persian dude to like help Athens?
Right. He's got more contacts and more connections in Athens, right? So I think the Athenians are more likely to take him back. The king of Sparta wants to kill him for sleeping with his wife. That's a harder one to come back from than like you pulled the dicks off the gods.
Okay, yeah.
Right? Although that's not great. That was a little further in the past. And so maybe they've forgotten about that. Maybe it'll blow over.
And it's not against a specific human.
Right.
Yeah.
There are some nobles in Athens who probably still like him. So he doesn't want to live in Persia. He wants to go back to Greece. So those are your options. Then you're not going to, what are you going to go with? Thebes? Those guys? can't sing.
Yeah, those
can't
guys
talk.
are flute players.
They should be playing flutes.
Yeah. Okay, so Alcibiades, he's like his horizon of expectations or whatever is like, hey, I'm
If I can
still
convince the
identifying as
Persians to
Athenian.
join
Yeah.
Athens and work together to defeat the Spartans, that should win me over, right? Like, even if they're mad at me, they're not going to be mad if I can help them win this war by getting the 800-pound gorilla on their side. Cool. Problem is, they got this democracy thing. They're never going to vote for it. Alcibiades is like,
Yeah.
I'll be right back.
So Alcibiades is trying to broker, finagle, cajole, maneuver some sort of alignment somehow
Right.
between Athens and Persia. Yeah.
Yes. And the way he decides to do that is by overthrowing Athenian democracy
Like you do.
to save his own skin.
Yeah. And yeah, Tissaphernes did not think that a democratic government would support the Persians. So Alcibiades is like, okay, yeah, I'm going to overthrow the democratic government.
I'm going to change the government so that I won't be murdered.
Yeah. Now, Athens is not 100% pro-Alcibiades at this point, and Alcibiades knows this. So he's trying to see what he can do without setting foot in Athens proper. He meets up with some of the Athenian army stationed on the island of Samos. Alcibiades knew that there were several aristocrats who were disgruntled with the way things were going in Athens, especially with the way the Sicilian expedition had turned out. So were these disgruntled aristocrats going to stage a coup on their own, even if Alcibiades hadn't shown up? Thucydides thinks that they might have. Some modern scholars think they might not have. Be that as it may, there were, certain parties, certain elements in Athens who were ready for Alcibiades when he shows up. Some of them weren't interested in setting up an oligarchy per se, but they did think that it was a good idea to get Alcibiades back and using his particular skill set in service of Athens. And so Alcibiades, he tells the Athenians that he's BFFs with Tissaphernes. And his best friend Tissaphernes wants an oligarchy running things in Athens. Oligarchy, not democracy, because that's the way the Persians like to do things. And also pragmatically, the Persians, specifically Tissaphernes, might realize that the democracy in Athens might not be pro-Persian, but if there's an oligarchy, maybe there's more influence, blah, blah, blah. And some of these Athenian aristocrats think it might actually be a good idea to have Tissaphernes, the Persian, on their side, A, because he's supporting Athens, and also B, because he's very much not supporting Sparta in this potential development. And isn't it convenient that our boy Alcibiades, for certain highly fluctuating values of our boy, is so tight with Tissaphernes? So Alcibiades manages to win over some Athenian holdouts by changing his rhetoric. So instead of saying, hey, I want to set up an oligarchy, he's like, oh, hey, I think we can make this work if we just tweak a little thing here and there, and let's just dial down the democracy a bit.
Just like how all tyrants begin, right?
Yeah.
So let's just want to make a little changes to the Constitution, just a little one.
Yeah. So one thing leads to another, and this is the coup that results in establishing the 400. And apparently we like naming numerical quantities. So who are
round
the 400?
Numbers too.
Yeah, round numbers, yes. Yeah, they're an oligarchic council. They're very anti-democratic. And here's the thing. The Athenian navy objects. So the 400 were soon replaced by the 5,000, which was more moderate. Okay, both of these were one way or another kind of oligarchic. None of this lasts more than a year, though. So if you kind of rewind a little bit to the 400, he got the 400, the pro-Persian oligarchy, installed. So he could show Tissaphernes, the Persian governor, that Athens would be receptive to Persian support, which is a fancy way of saying Persian influence.
So Alcibiades incites a coup that creates a revolution in Athens that for 1 year changes their system of government from Athenian democracy, kind of the basis for, like, the rough basis for how we run modern governments today, changes it into an oligarchy, which is a government run by a small group of elites for 1 year, so that he personally can be accepted back into Athens without being murdered, which is what happens. They throw him a parade when he returns to town. They drop all charges. They give him a parade down the main street.
Accepted, but embraced.
Yes, they gave him a parade down the street where he pulled all the dicks off. They make him the commander-in-chief of the Athenian Navy. They build statues to him while he's still alive. What is the deal with this guy? He must have been really, really fun to talk to. He must have been really charismatic in person. Because on paper, this is bonkers.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So Alcibiades is now the commander of the Athenian army. We are still in a Peloponnesian War here. We're still going to fight against the Spartans. He leads the Athenian fleet in an attack against the Spartan navy in the Hellespont. He is defeating them in a series of battles, and it's 410 BC now. He smashes them. He breaks their hold on the Black Sea. He defeats them in a series of battles, opens up the Black Sea for Athenian trade, whereas the Spartans had it before. He takes the fleet north. He fights the Persians, which that seems like a bad idea, but okay, it's a little bit more complicated than that because the different Persian governors had their different alliances. Some of them were holding, some of them didn't quite get on board with the Athenians. Some of them still like the Spartans. He defeats a Persian force up there at Abdios. He recaptures Byzantium from Persia for Athens and returns home as this conquering hero. They give him a huge triumph through the streets of Athens in 407. Whoa, they make him Strategos Autocrator. I don't think I'm saying that correctly.
Which is Strategos Autocrator. Yeah, sounds good to me. Yeah. Which is a big fancy title for, honestly, a big fancy role.
Yeah, it's the overall commander of all Athenian military forces, land, sea, and air. He's the greatest hero that Athens has seen in their time since the defeat of the first Persian invasion in 480. He's a huge hero. He beat the Spartans. He beat the Persians that allied with the Spartans. He took freaking Constantinople. This is a big deal.
Woo!
Yeah,
everything's coming up Alcibiades.
Yes. So it doesn't last long, but for that moment, he's a great hero.
Yeah.
The Spartan navy regroups. They close in for a battle. And Alcibiades, we've seen him repeatedly be a military genius. He's a lot of things, not many of them like not complimentary, but he is a military leader that is very competent. He hasn't lost any battles that he's commanded. And he puts together a plan to crush the last remnants of the Spartan navy. He leaves his helmsman, who's the guy who drives the flagship. This guy's named Antiochus. He leaves him in charge of 80 ships. He parks his fleet, tells like the fleets in these days, they follow the flagship. The flagship's the ship that the commander's on. They assume the commander is there, leading their guys personally into battle, which when you think about that makes a lot of these naval battles even more heroic for Alcibiades because he's leading the troops in.
Yeah.
So he's like
putting a target on his own back or his own chest
he's,
or whatever.
He's spearheading the attacks, right? And so he's on the main ship and he sneaks off the main ship. He leaves the helmsman. He's like, all right, stay here. Don't do anything. No matter what, don't do anything. I'm going to sneak off and do something cool. So he sneaks off. He goes across the Aegean, organizes a smaller Athenian force to attack the Spartans in Asia Minor, hoping to draw them away out of this area so that maybe he can set up a trap, right? Oh, Alcibiades, we saw Alcibiades. He's not with the fleet. He's over here instead. And it might have worked, except that Antiochus decided he was a military genius and led the attack by himself, even though he was a helmsman and was not in any way rated to fight the Spartan navy or lead this attack. So
wait a minute. So Antiochus attacked the Spartan navy.
Attacked the Spartan navy. He's got 80 ships. He's got more ships than the Spartans have. But I don't know. Maybe he just got tired of waiting for Alcibiades. Maybe he didn't get the memo. Maybe he just failed at his
He had one job. His one job was to not attack the Spartans.
Yes. Yeah. And he failed at it. And I don't know why, but he thought maybe he saw an opening, but He had no orders to do so, and he attacks the Spartans, and he is not a military genius, and he is crushed, and the entire fleet is destroyed.
No!
Yeah. The fleet's crushed. The Spartans have a huge victory. Alcibiades is stripped of command because he neglected his duties and left the entire fleet in command of a guy who was not rated to command it. And he left his fleet in the hands of a moron to go attack a castle in Thrace and was defeated. And the Spartans end up winning the Peloponnesian War. They pull down the city walls of Athens. They, end Athens as a military power in Greece for at least the next decade or two. And that's how that ends.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So now the Spartans are in charge of Athens, and Alcibiades isn't safe anywhere because
he's pissed off everyone.
Okay, so Sparta is in command of everything now, and Timea has given birth to the son of Alcibiades. His name is Leotochides of Sparta. They call him a prince, but he's never going to inherit. And King Aegeus II, he still hasn't forgotten about this. He wants to get Alcibiades. So, okay, Alcibiades, where's he going to go? He flees back to Persia.
Persia.
Yeah.
Okay.
He goes back to Persia and he tries to tell Tissaphernes to attack Sparta, go to war with Sparta.
How did that go?
Tissaphernes and everybody else are sick of Alcibiades' shit, and they decide. Everybody just decides this guy's got to go.
He's more trouble than he's worth.
More trouble than he's worth. So in 404 BCE, Alcibiades is at home. He's in this guy, like, all of his friends have kind of deserted him, but he's still rich. He still has influence. He still has money. He's in I picture like a pretty nice house on the beach, overlooking, the Mediterranean. He's in Persia.
Oh, yeah.
It's a nice spot, right? But it's not quite what he was hoping for. He's there. I'm sure there's various other people there with him relaxing, but
a bowl of olives, glass of wine.
Yeah, he's got
good life,
his silk sheets. Yeah. And then he starts to smell something. It smells like it's burning. Maybe somebody left the oven on. And no, somebody has set the house on fire. There's a crackling, there's a fire, there's a glow. There's the sounds of voices outside. People are circling around, angry voices. And Alcibiades realizes that he's surrounded and his house is on fire. And there's probably some screaming from some of the people in the house. But Alcibiades, some versions say he was laying in bed. Others, he was in the bath. He jumps up. He's a warrior.
In any case, he's not really very clothed.
He's not clothed
Certainly
at
not
all.
Armored.
He's completely naked. He jumps up. Does he take time to put on his armor? No, he's going to go out the way he lived. He grabs a sword and he runs outside completely naked and just starts fighting everybody out there. There's a bunch of guys out there, right? A bunch of dudes trying to stab at him with spears and stuff. He's fighting everybody. He's wounding a bunch of them. He's fighting really well. He wounds a couple guys. He kills a couple of them. They eventually flee him and start shooting him with bows and arrows, and they get him. He gets wounded a few times. They eventually throw a javelin at him and kill him.
Alcibiades.
Yeah, he died how he lived, naked and screaming. The identities of his killers were never discovered. Some people think, yeah, it's a great mystery of the ancient world. Some people think that they were Spartan assassins sent by Aegeus II in a vengeance mission. Some of them think that they may have been sent by the Persians.
Maybe they were the Herms come to life to get revenge. That is a joke. That is actually a joke. I made that up.
Yes, but it is also like not a great idea to pull the penises off of gods. That seems like the kind of karma that comes back to get you eventually.
Yeah.
At least one ancient source says that Alcibiades was sleeping with one of the local girls in the area and her brother found out and assembled a posse to go kill him, which seems plausible.
Okay. I mean, to be fair, the king of Sparta had a vaguely similar idea.
Yeah. And like, that's kind of the end of him. We don't know who got him. He pissed off enough people. Could have been Athenians, could have been Persians, could have been politically motivated, could have been personally motivated, could have been any number of reasons. A lot of people wanted, they could have all come together, and everybody standing outside the house that night was a different person that had been personally slighted by Alcibiades, waiting to kill him.
Yeah.
But he dies here, and that's kind of the end of his story. Like you said, your colleague said that he was an ass and not a badass, and I will not even begin to argue that. I think that he was an ass to such a monumental and hilarious degree that it makes the story so funny and so like he transcends this guy's just a jerk and becomes like, actually, this is pretty fucking awesome.
Yeah.
This guy's life was this guy's life was so nuts that you said before, Socrates, very famously, he drinks the hemlock. He's condemned to death for being an Athenian or whatever reasons he's convicted for.
Corrupting the youth of Athens.
Yes. So he has to drink hemlock and kill himself. That's his punishment. But Alcibiades' life was so crazy and off the rails that when Socrates was standing trial for corrupting the youth of Athens, it's eventually like what he gets executed for. One of the prime examples that was repeatedly presented by the prosecution during the trial was that Socrates was friends with Alcibiades. So like, obviously, this guy's corrupting the youth of Athens. His friendship with Alcibiades was one of the main contributing factors to his death. Which,
Your Honor, I present Exhibit A for Alcibiades.
Yes, just this. Here's a picture of them standing together. Here's the thing that he wrote about Alcibiades being hot. Tell me this is not corrupting the youth of Athens.
So that's Alcibiades.
That's Alcibiades. He's like one of the biggest jerks in classical history and maybe of all of history. But
and also competent in his own way.
Amazingly competent at being a jerk and also like good at warfare and politics and convincing people to do things. It's kind of a common theme that we've been coming across with a lot of our episodes that we've been doing is like, this guy was extremely charismatic and we can't really understand why, because they I get real like La Maupin vibes from Alcibiades.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's Alcibiades. I think he's pretty badass. I hope you guys will at least see where I'm coming from when I say that. We really appreciate you guys listening to it. We really hope that you will like and subscribe and leave us some likes and some comments and all of this stuff. Everything that you guys do really helps the show out, and we appreciate it. See you on the next one.
Don't be a jerk.
Don't be a jerk.
Stay badass.
Badass of the Week is an iHeartRadio podcast produced by High Five Content. Executive producers are Andrew Jacobs, me, Pat Larish, and my co-host, Ben Thompson. Writing is by me and Ben. Story editing is by Ian Jacobs, Brandon Phibbs. Mixing and music and sound design is by Jude Brewer. Special thanks to Noel Brown at iHeart. Badass of the Week is based on the website badassoftheweek.com, where you can read all sorts of stories about other badasses. If you want to reach out with questions, ideas, you can email us at badasspodcast@badassoftheweek.com. If you like the podcast, subscribe, follow, listen, and tell your friends and your enemies if you want, as we'll be back next week with another one. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.